So we were talking about karma yesterday in terms of revelatory and non-revelatory forms. Revelatory forms being the shape of the body or the sound of the voice, which is the actual verbal or physical action. And then we talked about vows being one type of non-revelatory form. There's different types, and vows are one type. And here, a vow, the non-revelatory form is a subtle form of matter or of material, of form, that is not perceptible to, like the eye, for example, and it's not obstructable. Doesn't take up space. And so when you take a vow, you receive a non-revelatory form by the force of your determination to keep that vow. Okay? So they talk here in the context of vows and non-revelatory forms, they talk about three kinds. There's a vow, what they call a non-vow, but I'll explain what that means. And then there's one that a category of other, okay? So I know this is very clear. So the vows are, for example, when you take the pratimoksha vows, then what they call the precept bodies. So you receive this non-revelatory form that acts like a dam that keeps you from doing what you've decided you don't want to do. Okay? So to not kill, to not lie, these physical and verbal actions that are related with the pratimoksha vows. With the bodhisattva vows and the tantric vows, it's a different thing. They don't talk about non-revelatory form there, just with the pratimoksha, the monastic vows and the 5 lay precepts. Okay? Then the non-vow is when you make a very strong determination, but it's to do something non-virtuous. Okay? So it's a vow of sorts, but it's a non-virtuous vow in the sense. So it might be somebody, for example, who's decided to be a butcher during their life, yeah, or somebody who's decided to fight and kill the enemy over a long period of time. So you've made a decision about some physical or verbal action that you're going to do that's non-virtuous. So when you make that decision, you get this non-revelatory form. Then the third kind of non-revelatory form is the other category. And so this is when you construct a holy object with the intention of people creating merit in relationship to it. So, for example, if you build a monastery, if you build a stupa, if you offer food to the sangha, these are the things that are listed in the Abhidharma. So there's 7 in particular, I can't remember all of them. But this kind of thing where you build some kind of form or make some kind of offering to holy beings, and then whenever people are using that, you accumulate merit by this non-revelatory form. Okay? So for example, if you offer a monastery or then even you're away doing something else, when people are using that and using it to create virtue, then you receive good karma because of this non-revelatory form that you have, okay, which arose due to your determination to make this offering of a holy object. Okay? And so they say that, that's why it's so good to make these kinds of offerings, because then from now until you die, whenever somebody's using it and benefiting it, you get some good karma from it. So it's quite powerful. Okay? Then there's another way in which non-revelatory forms comes into karma, and that is when you tell somebody to do a certain action. So if I tell somebody to do either a virtuous physical or verbal action or a non-virtuous physical verbal action, when they follow my instructions and do it, I accumulate at that moment a non-revelatory form. Okay? And the reason why they say that the person who gives the instruction accumulates a non-revelatory form is because, let's say I tell somebody to do something non-virtuous, but at the time they do it, my mind is in a virtuous or a neutral state. Then how would I accumulate the karma? So the way you accumulate the karma is you receive this non-virtuous, non-revelatory form. Or in the same way, if I instructed somebody to do something virtuous, and at the time they did it, my mind was non-virtuous or neutral, the way I accumulate the karma is by receiving this non-revelatory form at the time. Now, the non-revelatory forms, whether this kind that you receive by instructing somebody to do an action, or a vow or a non-vow, these last only as long as your gross physical body lasts, and at the time of death they're lost. So that's why when you ordain, let's say as a monk or a nun, or you take the 5 precepts, you always say from now until the end of my life, because at the end of your life you automatically lose the precept body, you know, that non-revelatory form.